Hi, Jody.
Hey, Vanessa. Hey, Matt.
Hey, what's up, man?
All right, all right. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good. Excited for another episode.
Yeah, another episode of the Treester. Again, check us out at thetreester.com. And also, you can check us out on Instagram or on Twitter, LinkedIn. Interact with us, and YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, today's topic, why hasn't solar energy taken over the world?
Yeah, that's a very good topic, right? Because now there's wildfires going on in San Francisco. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's pretty much a red sky, like in the city, right there in the middle, Silicon Valley, fires everywhere. And solar, I've heard of solar since I was a kid, right? And everyone's wondering why hasn't solar taken over, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I guess, I also did some research on my own, and one very popular article, and also a podcast that was done by a couple, Stuff You Should Know. I think that's a pretty popular podcast. They also talked a little bit about solar, and apparently every 5 days the sun provides the earth with as much energy as all proven supplies of oil, coal, and natural gas. And
Yeah.
But Matt had a counter argument to that, right?
Well, I mean, they don't give any units, like how many barrels of oil is that? How many pounds of coal or natural gas? And what time frame? I don't know. It's just kind of a blanket statement, but it is a lot of energy going to waste. When you have a lot of desert out there that's no one's using for anything. It's just,
Yep, okay, yep. So yeah, and they also mention, and I guess we'll talk about that, but now we're kind of going over the pros, and that same article also mentioned that apparently if we could capture 1/6000th of Earth's available solar energy, we'd be able to meet 100% of our energy needs. That's a very exciting
Sounds
statement.
amazing. Yeah.
But I don't know, Matt, do you have a counter argument to that? I think you were saying that.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Like the amount of photons that contact the Earth's surface in a day, in a week, in a month?
It says that we're going to meet 100% of our energy needs, right? So that would mean, all to power our cars, to power our homes, all of that.
Yeah, so the main con here. Let's move to the cons.
Okay. So
it's expensive.
right, yeah. So yeah, one of the famous issues with solar energy is that it requires a lot of land area, right, to establish the solar farms. So that takes a lot of space, buying land, etc., etc. It's
Even
also
clearing out the wildlife in the land for that.
yeah. It's also, historically at least, it's more expensive than, coal energy, that sort of thing. We already have the entire ecosystem and industry for that. So, it's more expensive to establish a new system, right? And so, yeah, you wanted to talk about the cons, right?
The startup costs is the main thing. After a few years, then it sort of pays for itself, and you have your maintenance costs. Maybe if batteries go bad or whatnot. But and again, that's like half of the cost. The batteries. I looked up like sort of building my own solar system for my house a while ago, and the batteries came up to like 50% of the cost of the whole entire solar installation. So I guess the more we develop battery technology, the better.
Yeah, so I guess for people who don't understand how the process works, right? So how does it work, right? You put some. What do you put on your ceiling? How does that work, right? Why would you need a battery? Just to provide some explanation.
Well, it starts off with the photovoltaic cells. They're basically, if you were you could make your own panel by sort of soldering together a bunch of these cells and then have a sort of like a tempered glass pane. And it's got to be like really high quality glass because you're going to put it on your roof, and then you have things like hail and if you live in the forest, maybe sticks and things like that are going to impact it, and so you got to think of that. And it's got to be watertight. You got to have it sealed. You're going to need a power regulator to regulate the amount of energy going into the batteries, because you don't want to just flood it with a bunch of energy in spikes, because the sun's not always going to be out in 100% consistent all the time.
Yeah.
So you got to.
You definitely can't collect energy during that time.
Yeah. So then you need the batteries and the power inverter to take the energy from the battery and basically charge your devices with it, or whatever your home appliances and whatever.
Yeah, so in short, basically, panels are installed on someone's roof, right, in their homes, whatever, and then those panels kind of absorb and convert the sunlight to electricity that's then stored in a battery. And I think the huge issue surrounding solar, among the many issues, it's the battery, right? Like the storing that energy that is produced from the panels, the farms, etc. is expensive.
It's about $7,100 to get 14 kilowatts of power.
Okay. Yep. So,
and batteries
just for the battery storage, yeah.
Yeah, and batteries go bad after a while. The technology is getting better, but right now
it's eroding.
Yeah, you might you have to have a proper place to store them too. Like you can't just put it in your living room, or you've got to have a dedicated storage area with a concrete floor, and make sure they're not exposed to the elements. So
Yep.
Yeah, imagine having like an initial house, right? A regular house, so like a 4-bedroom house. The average cost for the average home, it'll be like about 15 to 29,000. That's gonna produce 4 kilowatts and 8 kilowatts of power. That sounds like extremely expensive. That's like a couple of cars there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have a house big enough to have to cover that many solar panels too.
Yep. So yeah, it's expensive, and there's a long way to go in terms of innovating, right?
Well, there's Tesla is working on like these roof tiles that are actually photovoltaic cells, and it's sort of like blends in. It doesn't look like you have solar panels on your roof, which is kind of cool. And there is supposedly the cost of basically re-roofing your house and adding conventional solar panels is more expensive than just basically re-roofing with these solar panel these, what are they called? I think they're called V3s, Tesla V3 solar cells. So that's good. I haven't I don't know anyone that actually has them, but it'd be interesting to see how much they pay, and when they're actually going to pay for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I don't know, Jody. Did you find anything else interesting regarding just solar? I guess those are
Yeah,
the main.
I found something pretty interesting on like solar, right? So one of the main compounds like found in solar panels is like cadmium and lead, right? And those are extremely toxic. Like you've all heard of like lead poisoning, and you have to be very careful. And those things are like used in the production of solar panels. And there's also like for the environmental factor, there's also like gases and other things that are also released as well. So it's like we do have a long way to go. As it's a good, I like the idea, but the production of it, which long term, it seems like it'll help out the environment, but we still have a while to go for it to be like pretty environmentally friendly.
Yep, that's right. Yep. So yeah, and I guess while doing this sort of research, we also were wondering then what is the solution, right? If solar alone, it might cause a lot of issues environmentally and otherwise, and just even technologically, right? All of the things we mentioned, then what is the solution? So apparently Iceland, right? Iceland is a case study in renewable energy. Apparently almost 100%, if not 100% of their electricity comes from renewable. Their air conditioning, heating, it's all fueled by geothermal energy. And the more basic energy needs, like fridges, computers, it's powered by hydroelectricity. And I think Matt actually watched a documentary on it. I think it's on Netflix, so I don't know. Like, do you want to talk about it?
Well, I forgot what the documentary is called, but yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, hydroelectricity like a cost is it's pretty like cost competitive, so it's pretty good.
Well, it all depends on where you are. Like, if you live on top of a volcano, then geothermal might be a great alternative.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Hawaii and, like, I don't know, people worship the volcanoes and there's a whole, like, cultural conflict there. But, like, if you have access to geothermal, you should use it. If you have access to a large river, maybe, consider hydroelectric power. If you have access to a really windy environment, like you're on a mountaintop and you get a lot of wind all the time, but maybe you don't have it's not a volcano, but you don't have any rivers, and it's not very sunny all the time. Well, wind's probably a good alternative.
Yeah.
You gotta work with your environment too, and like, I think it's also really important that we keep the biological ecosystems that are in mind that will be affected by these things. If you're using geothermal and you make a mistake and there's a pipe that gets corroded and you have a gas leak that pollutes and kills so many things in the ecosystem, well then that's bad. And when you're taking energy from something, let's say it's a river, like you're sort of taking that energy away from the organisms living in ecosystems downstream of that. So you should think about how can you replace that energy.
Yep.
Very true. And even with like solar, even the installation process, the land that needs to be like cleared, it could, like, the solar fields could be like really massive to get like a decent amount of power.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and like imagine it, like trying to share that land, for agricultural uses, which we need, is like that's clearly not possible. So like we're affecting ourselves as well. So it's like, yeah, as you said, as you guys both said, like get a little bit from everywhere. That seems like that's the solution. Whatever's around you, whatever's going to benefit you. Yeah.
Right. Be versatile. Be adaptable, and think about the consequences of taking that energy from the environment.
Yep. absolutely. Yeah, so Iceland definitely a country to kind of look at and take ideas and inspiration and seeing what works for the different countries. Other countries that have also have a lot of interesting effects, a lot of interesting ideas in terms of renewable energy. Costa Rica, they've innovated a lot with it. Albania, Ethiopia, Paraguay, Norway. So they have most of their electricity produced by 100% green. So they managed a way to combine solar, wind, hydro, things like that. Yeah, so I think we're moving along, right? We do need
Yeah.
more people to kind of think about these sort of issues and innovate. Yeah, it's moving there. Wind, right? I've worked on wind energy, in the past, doing some research regarding that. I think people are exploring, different ways to implement that. But also the issue with wind is almost the same as solar, storing it, right? The batteries that are big enough to store all that energy, right? So even if we create the energy, where do we store it? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's all for us, right? We'll keep thinking, and I guess that's why doesn't rule the world, right? We still need to innovate.
Yeah.
It's always more complicated than it initially appears. Got a lot of things that solar affects, other than just, having free power, which is great. On the surface, it looks great, and you just gotta work a lot of the kinks out.
Yep. There's an interesting video, and I'll put the link below here. It's a YouTube TED Talk where this gentleman who's been in the energy industry for a little bit in terms of renewables and environmentalism, I definitely recommend people to take a look at it. It does have a lot of interesting information. But basically what he said was that maybe the answer is nuclear, right? Nuclear energy, he seems to love it. I don't know much about nuclear energy, so I'm not going to comment on that.
I don't know a whole lot about it either, but
Yeah.
I do know that there's a waste issue, and so far I think what we've been doing is just burying the waste, and it's like burying it in capsules, which, eventually one day those capsules could crack or leak, and that would be really, really bad for the environment, bad for everybody.
And I think like the half-life too.
Yeah.
After like decomposing is like it's gonna be around for a while.
It's gonna be around for longer, probably longer than we'll be here.
Yeah.
So if somehow they can come up with nuclear reaction mechanism that doesn't produce any waste, maybe produces like a kind of waste that's less detrimental to the environment, be a pretty great alternative. But then on top of that, just like with solar and all these other technologies, it costs a serious amount of money to build those factories, to build those things. If we wanted to power all of the world's energy needs through nuclear, it would take trillions upon trillions of dollars.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. This is gonna be a topic that we're gonna be watching very closely, right? There's a lot of information out there, sometimes misinformation. So, us at TREESTER, one of the reasons we're kind of doing this is that we want the truth, right? Like there's so much information out there. Some people, are just working for different industries, so whatever they put out there is biased and whatnot. So we try to kind of not be biased, right? Really finding
Yeah.
answers, looking for solutions. So we're definitely gonna keep an eye on this, and we'll give you an update if we find more interesting information, solutions, and that sort of thing.
All right.
Yep. So I guess for next week's episode will be, if anyone has any ideas about what you like for us to talk about, explore, think about, we're definitely here. And Jody, any closing thoughts?
Well, I pretty much have to say, do some more research into, not for you guys, but for the listeners, I should say, do some more research into renewable energy. And, it's election year, so, go out and vote for whoever you feel would be best practices for personal reasons and for the environment as well, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. Very good point. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys next week. Remember, TREESTER, our app is going to be coming out soon. Letting everyone connect and talk about this sort of interesting stuff.
All right.
Bye. Talk to
All
you
right,
next
bye,
week.
guys.
Bye, Jody.